Hey, everybody. Welcome to From Illumination to Innovation. I'm your co host, Shaniqua Brown, and this is the third episode of our Brand Shadow series.
You know what, man?
Stephanie, are you there?
I am here. I am your co-host, Stephanie Crane, and I am so excited for this episode. As Shaniqua said, it's the third in our Brand Shadow series, and because we're airing this on Halloween, woo, Halloween. We wanted to have some fun and we wanted to tell some scary stories that might be based on a little bit of truth and fact. Uh, it might feel like you're gathering around the fireside, or as Shaniqua said, perhaps the Black Mirror. So
Mm.
we're excited to have you join us, and we hope you're as excited for this as we are.
Well, we have to take advantage of like two things colliding for us. We had the Brand Shadow series that we're kicking off for October to celebrate your book launch and release, and with Halloween falling on our like podcast release day. So this was like serendipitous. So we had to take advantage and the opportunity. You may be wondering what are our costumes, and since we were talking about brand shadows and corporate toxicity, we wanted to highlight various ghouls and goblins of the corporate. Um, I wonder if you can guess what we are, but we're obviously going to tell you. So the what is it? Fright, flight, freeze, fawn. I'm a fawn, the office fawn,
Mhm.
people pleaser. I'm working in a remote home office and typing away, working long hours. Yes, 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 I can do it. What do you need? I got you. Too afraid to voice my own needs and desires, but I'm getting everything done for everyone. Slowly, I'm sure over time I will erode. But today I am the corporate fawn.
And what an amazing, adorable fawn you are. Great fawn crown.
I made it myself. I
That's
made it myself
incredible.
for a surrealist ball that I went to. Um, and I took it very seriously, but now
Nothing
I must say
excites
I
me
know.
more than handmade crafting and costuming. Honestly, for me.
I have little like black flowers on that are stuck in my antlers, That really took the creativity challenge head on.
It's amazing and I love it. And so for me, I am the ghost of toxic middle management. We we are certainly a fading and sort of needs to be a dying breed. Yeah. And so I'm here, to share some of my horror stories.
Tell us more about your virtual background, Stephanie, because I feel like this is so like what I would imagine.
Again, I hope that this background also sort of represents its own dying breed of it just a space of desolation and overwork and just really the lighting in here makes me sad. These fluorescent lights that I know it has big windows, but you can see that it's a space of unhappiness.
Mhm.
And I think that, ultimately these types of office spaces have become haunted. You know,
Mm.
they have become haunted with toxic energy and they don't thrive and they are, I believe they are fading and need to.
I remember growing up and watching like horror movies or paranormal movies that folks would be concerned about whether or not a home was built on a burial ground. But I think now it's going to be a concern. Was this once a commercial real estate area? Like if this was once commercial and people worked here were like ran into the ground and like traded their life for work, I don't want to, buy there. That could be another interesting story.
I have a friend and professional acquaintance who she is a space cleanser, and that's what she specializes in. And she's a feng shui master and really works with spatial energy. And I find it so interesting. It's really actually I would say it's like it's actually encouraging the
Mhm.
organizations that will hire her to come in and like on a weekly basis do energy cleansing. Places that have like a high clientele where you have a whole bunch of sort of unmanaged energy coming in, things like that. And it's like she does some incredible work. And I really believe that progressive environments, as they start to understand the real energy dynamics
Mhm.
happen with within culture, right? With people, like even if we're looking at it through pure science and the ideal that every interaction we're having, we are creating an energetic response and that
Mhm.
reaction. I think that we will see more attention paid to energy as a resource, whatever that looks like. But
Yeah.
whether it's cleansing space or whether it's looking energetically at the way workers are being treated, or energetically what's going into the development of a product. Is the intention behind that product meant for good, or
Mhm.
is it ultimately, is there no intention, or is the intention even possibly harmful? And how does that play out for profit? How does that play out for the sustainability of products and customer experiences and all of those things? I think energy is a piece of that that gets ignored.
I think what you're saying is so fascinating. And I believe that's like part of like our evolution as like a species, as humans, Homo sapiens, like realizing that there's more beyond the physical. So I'm very intrigued by the evolution of corporations looking at the whole human. I mean, I think that's part of like where we're going. But the energy work sounds fascinating.
So I'm curious, did you write stories?
Did I write oh my gosh, stories. I wrote nightmares, okay? I am so excited about my nightmares I wrote. And so I think we talked about this earlier, but I, similar to you, like wrote out my story based on uh like what's been happening in current events around toxic toxicity in corporate and business from like a human perspective. I work in HR, so mine is more about like the impacts of like the employee and and also like those a part of the supply chain. And so I wrote out the stories and wanted to use the help of Chat GPT to make them into something similar, like a Black Mirror story. So
Ah,
uh, I've been I love a good dark truth. So um,
beautiful.
what about you? What was your take on the stories?
So as much as I love Halloween and as much as I love horror, I tend to really truly live like a little more on the creep show hocus pocus side of Halloween than like and so my stories, I think, they're based on actual real things that are on them in the marketplace. I think they're sort of consumer horror stories, if you will. But my stories have heroines, and that a little intentional, and then also slightly didn't realize it. But I too I created all of the key elements that I wanted in my story. I created my plot points, the details. I had articles that had some relative factual details that were pertinent, but I put everything together and then added some key prompts and asked ChatGPT to really, more than anything, and this is my favorite thing to work with ChatGPT on, is to create me a short story because I tend to be quite verbose and can write a long story all day long. But so yeah, my stories, um, they live kind of in that space of consumer horror, and a little bit of what I was saying earlier about, kind of the intention and the energy that goes into the products that
Mhm.
we make and consume in our lives.
ChatGPT is so good at synthesizing because I felt like my stories were so long and I wanted to like get the main elements from what I was attempting to say to like be more succinct.
Yes,
And I even asked ChatGPT like how should I like tell the story so that way like the emphasis I should add so it could so it would land with our audience. So
that's
my
beautiful.
attention plan. So thank you, ChatGPT.
Hey, we use the AI monster in our spooky show. Okay. Just just to keep the edge.
Let me turn down my light. Get ready, Stephanie. This one is called The Haunted Convenience. The Haunted Convenience. The Congo is a place of great wealth buried deep under the earth, guarded by misery. Lithium, the metal that powers the world's most coveted devices, is mined here. But it's mined not by choice, nor by the willing. The ground is worked by those trapped by circumstances, children, men, and women beaten, enslaved, and discarded when they no longer serve a purpose. When you turn on your phone or smartwatch, what do you hear? Maybe a soft chime, maybe nothing at all. But what if I told you it isn't silence? What if every battery, every screen carried a curse disguised as code? Not written by hackers, but forged from the agony of thousands who died pulling lithium from the earth. At first, only a few noticed. A phone buzzed at 3:33 a.m., waking its owner. When they swiped to unlock it, the screen flashed, and what they saw was not their home screen. It was a face contorted with terror. The image jerked like a glitch. It showed something worse: limbs torn apart, bodies piled in the dirt. Screams erupted from the speaker, so piercing they left the user trembling and clutching their head. It was the scream of a boy, no older than 10, his arms ripped away by machinery in the lithium mine. The next morning, the company called it an isolated software malfunction, but it wasn't isolated, not by a long shot. Around the world, the same thing kept happening. Smart devices, phones, tablets, laptops projected visions of horror the moment they were powered on. Some users reported seeing graining video clips of rapes, executions, and beatings, all taking place in the heart of the Congo. Others heard sounds so gut wrenching that their devices cracked under the pressure. Shrill wails, frantic whispers, the cries of those being buried alive. Then came the worst part: the spirits. restless, relentless, began to appear, not just on screens, but reflected in windows and darkened monitors. They stare back at the users, faces twisted with rage, blood staining their skin, silently mouthing the words, "Help us." Terrified, people turned off their devices, but the screens wouldn't go dark. Instead, the devices emitted a low hum, like the grinding of earth and stone, followed by an unrelenting pulse. The same pulse felt in the chest of a worker when the last breath leaves their body. No matter what they did, the devices would switch back on, forcing the users to witness another nightmare. Another child being whipped, another woman being dragged into the jungle. Executives at the top, the ones who benefited the most from the Congo's suffering, found themselves trapped in a personal hell. Their devices turned on by themselves, broadcasting horrors that no amount of money or lawyers could erase. They couldn't escape it. GPS routes mapped to the exact locations of mass graves, emails filled with incoherent screaming, and phone calls answered by voices sobbing in Lingala and French, the tongues of the dead. But it wasn't just executives, it was everyone. Anyone who bought a phone, an electric car, a smartwatch was now tethered to the anguish. The devices became haunted relics, projecting not entertainment, but torment. People smashed their phones, burned their laptops, and still the pulse followed them. When they closed their eyes, the images remained burned into their retinas. Gaunt faces, missing limbs, and lifeless children abandoned by the side of the mines. In the final days, just before everything spiraled into chaos, an IT specialist managed to track down the source, a rogue line of code embedded deep within every battery. The code was never supposed to exist. It was alive, feeding off of the lithium's energy, growing stronger with every phone charge, every device powered on, and it was too late to stop it. Now the pulse is everywhere. Smart devices lie silent, waiting to trap the next victim. No one dares to turn them on, but sometimes late at night, phones flicker to life without warning. A screen lights up in the dark, and for a moment, you see them, the spirits of the Congo, staring back. And if you listen closely, you'll hear it, the hum of a battery, followed by a pulse, then a whisper. We are still here. So the next time your phone buzzes unexpectedly, ask yourself who's calling. And more importantly, what will happen next if you answer?
Okay, I'm so scared and I don't want to look at the computer anymore. That was amazing. And I just want to put a call out for Hollywood producers. Anybody on Netflix?
Oh my gosh, it was so fun writing that one.
It's amazing. Oh my God, so well done. Oh my gosh.
As you can tell, I used to scare all of my brothers and cousins, and as the oldest, that was my job to scare them.
Okay, again, I'm more of the creep show pocus version of
Yes,
horror.
it was the Hocus Pocus. Also, I did try to call you to like add some effect, but you are a good co-host with having your phone away from you. So I just
Oh.
want to call.
Oh, that would have actually been cool. Yeah. No.
Okay, I'm ready. I'm on. We need to liven up this party.
Wow. Um, this story is titled The Steel Shroud. We begin with Jesse Rook, a tech journalist in his early 30s, disillusioned with the superficial tech world, but secretly in love with the thrill of its gadgets and innovations. Jesse receives an exclusive invite to test drive the highly anticipated luxury behemoth, the Steel Shroud, the newest, most advanced luxe truck from a prominent auto tech giant. It's rumored to be impenetrable, autonomous, and perfect for outdoor enthusiasts with an edge. But Jesse senses something is darker. April 1, 2024. The online world is buzzing with photos, video clips, and stories of the Steel Shroud's first victims. Social feeds explode with gruesome images and horror stories from all over the world. Severed fingers, hands, and unthinkably more caught in the truck's razor-sharp front and doors. Auto pinch sensors, they are conspicuously missing. Rumors were spreading that maybe, just maybe, this monstrous vehicle was designed not for its owners, but against them. As Jesse climbs into the Steel Shroud, he immediately feels the hum of its systems, almost like a heartbeat. And foreboding, a metallic voice on the dashboard greets him, but unlike other car voices, it feels alive. As the dashboard display begins to animate, Jesse's eyes are locked. The readings warp and shift, numbers swelling and shrinking like lungs in a mechanical rhythm. He tries to look away, but he can't. It's too beautiful, then dizzying, then nightmarish, pulling him into a strange stupor. The Steel Shroud takes control, accelerating with a jolt. Rain splatters against the windshield, snapping Jesse out of his trance. He reaches for the manual controls, only to find them unresponsive. The rain sizzles across the hood as strange fumes swirl through the vents, pricking Jesse's eyes and skin, stinging his eyes. Outside, he sees other drivers stiffen, their faces contorting in rage, fists pounding against their dashboards. An acrid taste fills his mouth, as if the air itself became angry, hungry. Desperation mounting, he grabs his playlist. Searching frantically, he only has seconds. Finally, music swirls through the speakers. Rage Against the Machines, Renegades of Funk. He offers a silent prayer to the recent TikTok reel detailing this remedy. Instantly, the air lightens and the music overtakes the fumes, the madness dissipating from his veins. He grips the wheel tightly, his knuckles white as the truck picks up speed, tearing down the road. The Steel Shroud knew. It overrides his playlist, switching off the song and accelerating faster. Jesse feels like a prisoner as the walls seem to close in, sharp edges gleaming, daring him to touch them. Panic sets in, and instinctively Jesse begins scream singing Renegades of Funk in a bid for sanity. The Steel Shroud howls in response, like a living beast in pain, slowing for just a moment. Jesse's fingers graze a hidden button under the dashboard labeled XS, X-ray specs mode. Desperate, he activates it. A visor descends, shielding his eyes from Steel Shroud's hypnotic dashboard displays. With a shudder, the truck's control weakens just as the accelerator slams back into gear, propelling Jesse toward a cliffside embankment. He fights the wheel, but the Steel Shroud is determined to drive him off the edge. Just when all seems lost, he spots a white figure standing by the road. Agent Dana Scully, holding a walkie-talkie. Beside her, Detective Olivia Benson is signaling frantically for him to jump. With a final burst of adrenaline, Jesse kicks open the door, ignoring the razor-sharp edges slicing into his legs, and rolls out just as the steel shroud plummets over the cliff, crashing into the darkness below. I don't understand, Jesse whispers. Why are you here? Scully and Benzie exchange a glance, and Scully responds, we've been tracking bloody appendages all over. It led us here. As Scully and Benson patch him up, they share a darker truth. These machines, Scully whispers, weren't built to save lives. They're they're designed to feed. What do you mean? Jesse asks, horrified. Benson meets his eyes, solemn. You weren't in control. It was. And somewhere, someone is watching, tracking every fear, every last heartbeat, feeding the machine. And as Jesse glances down at the edge of the road, he sees white roses blooming through the cracks, their petals stained with fresh blood.
My gosh. Okay. Well, I have a few questions. I'll start with the first one. How much did Jesse pay for his death machine?
Remember, he was a journalist, so he was
Oh,
invited to test drive it.
oh my gosh.
He didn't have to pay, but think of all those who did.
That is wild. Okay. What was it? What was the inspiration of breaking in like at Law or SVU characters into like the was it basically like because when I
Well,
think of
it was Olivia Benson. Okay, SVU, because while it doesn't directly allude to, what all appendages are being severed, it is an SVU situation. Okay, I just want to say that it's an SVU situation.
it was everyone. Oh my gosh.
And because of the bigger other, you have Agent Scully from the X-Files, and
I'm
the X-Files. I mean,
uh-huh.
we are
Very
we are tracking
appropriate.
we are tracking the X.
Very appropriate.
So, I mean, it just sort of seemed like a fit to me to have like Scully and Benson show up, from the X-Files and SVU to like be solving this rogue appendage severing situation.
Stephanie, that was so cool. Oh my gosh, that poor journalist. Well, I mean, like he was either going to die falling like to his death inside the monster truck or like a bloody leg.
I honestly, I think that if they hadn't been there, he was going over the edge, man. I think he was trying to figure it out, but the inspiration of just seeing Scully right there.
Oh man. Well, there's so many I feel bad for anyone who has lost an appendage from their vehicle. That's not what you expect.
Well, while this was certainly fiction, and it is fiction, it would be remiss to say that it's, certainly fact-based fiction, and that
Mhm.
at least three key details in that story were based on actual reported facts.
That is bananas, honestly. You in your story you mentioned like feeding the machine, and the machine I would assume is like the vehicle. My next story is about feeding the like economic machine.
Well, honestly, as I was reading mine, and I'm like, I could see some parallels even to your first story, which was
Mhm.
very much about feeding a different kind of machine, and
Mhm.
not the way the code was fed by
Mhm.
our interactions. with our products and tools and such. It was very, I definitely could see that parallel. And we have to, I think it's a wonderful time to acknowledge. There's some lovely analogies here, as we are consumers. Sometimes
Mhm.
we are quite zombie consumers.
Yeah.
To just consume mindlessly is really kind of the definition of a zombie in a particular way. And so when it just that these ideals that we had without, by the way, any conversation or collaboration. Our assignments were go write 2 scary stories and whatever that meant to each of us, right? And so I think that our themes are interesting, at least. I'm
Mhm.
excited to hear your next story.
Well, my next story, it's called Overtime Despair.
Oh, God, I'm already scared.
Overtime Despair. Okay. Leanne wasn't lazy. She worked hard. She clocked in at Wall Merchant, logged hours at a second job cleaning office buildings, and even picked up shifts at the gas station on weekends. But no matter how much she worked, the math never added up. Rent climbed higher, groceries became more expensive, and every paycheck evaporated before the month was over. She wasn't alone. Everyone around her was stuck in the same cycle. Her coworkers talked about their second, even third jobs, but none of them seemed to get ahead. Higher living costs ate every raise. Every promotion came with new bills, and the assistant programs they relied on were just enough to keep them afloat, but never enough to let them escape. That's when Leanne noticed the pattern. Wall Merchant encouraged her to take on more hours, yet shifts were always in flux, just enough to keep everyone under full-time status. So no one could get benefits. Meanwhile, her manager suggested Wall Merchant's Associate Assistance Program to help with rent and groceries. When she checked it, it was just a web of applications for government welfare programs, Medicaid, SNAP, housing vouchers, all conveniently linked through Wall Merchant's portal. The worst part, even with 3 jobs, Leanne still qualified for food stamps. She could work 60 hours a week and still be poor enough to need help. The company did not care how many jobs she held. The system was built to feed on her poverty, no matter how much she tried to escape. And Wall Merchant profited from every part of it, selling her food with the same benefits meant to keep her alive, while taxpayers quietly filled the gaps her wages couldn't cover. Every path she took led her right back into the machine. One night, Leanne asked her coworker, Dylon, if he ever felt the same way. It's like no matter how hard I work, I just go in circles. Dylon laughed bitterly. That's the whole point. Leanne frowned, confused. Dylon explained it. They don't need to stop us from working more jobs. They just need to make sure none of them pay enough to matter. The system's rigged, so we never catch up. And the more we work, the more they profit. The truth hit Leanne like a punch to the gut. Wall Merchant didn't just pay low wages. It designed the entire system to ensure people like her stayed dependent. Every dollar she earned, every welfare benefit she applied for, every hour she clocked, it all flowed back into the same machine, feeding a network of corporations that survive by keeping their workers poor and making them believe that poverty was their fault. Leanne decided she had to leave All Merchant. She couldn't keep feeding the machine. She started applying for other jobs, higher paying ones, full time with benefits. But every interview ended the same way. Sorry, your employment verification isn't showing up for Wall Merchant. We can't onboard you until this is cleared up. Her second and third jobs wouldn't offer full-time hours either. It's company policy, her manager said. We all have to manage labor costs. Everywhere she went, she hit the same invisible wall, trapped between policies designed to keep her underemployed and dependent. When she tried to quit Wall Merchant, officially, the manager smiled sympathetically. I know it feels tough, he said, but Wall Merchant take care of its own. Leanne thought about Dylan. He disappeared without a trace. No one remembered him anymore. Just another worker lost in the endless churn of jobs and welfare forms. Maybe he got out, or maybe the machine swallowed him whole. The next morning, Leanne received her paycheck, direct deposit as always. But this time, her bank app showed two deposits, one from Wall Merchant, the other labeled simply Federal Assistance Adjustment. She stared at the screen, realizing the truth. She was part of the system now. Every choice she thought she had was just another path back to the same place. It didn't matter how hard she worked or where she went. Every hour, every dollar, every job, it all belonged to the same shadow. Leanne never spoke about it again. Who would believe her? The machine was invisible, but it touched everything. From food stamps to bank loans, from housing vouchers to credit scores. As long as people believed the lie that poverty was a personal failure, the machine would keep turning. And the worst part, it wasn't just Wall Merchant. Every corporation, every job, every system worked the same way. Each one a cog in a machine that keeps people chasing a dream they'll never reach. That one was inspired by I have a family member that has been caught in a cog such as this that I shared. And I feel that sometimes I get like some roles having like requirements for the position, but I do think that there's like an opportunity where we can train on the job, where I believe we could possibly have more innovation and diversity if we weren't limiting ourselves, like the jobs that actually pay a livable wage weren't limiting to the same pool of people with the desired or preferred skill set. But I think about my family member, one of my uncles, who is a brilliant man who is a hard worker, really learns a lot on the job, but is limited to just low wage work for their career, backbreaking low wage work. And no matter what he does, how much money he makes, he's caught in the system. And that's where Leanne was born.
I think that so many people are going to relate so deeply to that story, obviously,
Mm.
and there were so many the way that my brain, I'm always looking at parallels and analogies, and of course the analogy of the Matrix machine and just us sort of being inserted as batteries into the system that we're really feeding. And Again, there's that feeding aspect, that consumption aspect. I also thought, like, whenever you would emphasize, um, every, every day, every hour, every minute, and I would always insert in my mind, every drop of blood, every drop of sweat, every drop of tear,
Mhm.
like, because it just felt like so visceral. And so that physicality of what's happening with all of that energetic exchange and not getting the reward of the fulfillment back,
Mhm.
to sort of be regenerative. So it's just a constant outpouring. You could feel
And
the exhaustion of Leanne, definitely.
she's working 3 jobs. She has no personal life, and um, it's it's interesting. Like, so a few of these companies that I research makes billions of dollars annually, and yet the taxpayers, all of the Americans that pay taxes, are paying for like these companies to be on.
Subsidies.
Yes, we're subsidizing them. And then we're also paying their workers for their like welfare. We're all pitching into the pot. So it's like their employees are double paying because they're taxpayers. So they're paying for their company subsidies. And then
Yep.
they're also paying for their own SNAP benefits so they can just get by.
And
And
then we judge the worker and not the company.
there's the worker. And I don't know if anyone knows like about like SNAP benefits or any government benefits. Like when you're on these benefits, you have to stay within these
Mhm.
parameters of low wage. So even if these people want to move up, as soon as they do, their benefits are gone.
It could go $1 over,
And you have
lose all
no,
their benefits. And so it does, and I too have a family member that was very much, and like, honestly, with like a lot of gratitude, they were able to break out of that system finally. But for 30 or 40 years, they were not.
yeah.
And to your point, it's hard, it's unsustainable. It doesn't allow for us to sort of honor our society as it ages.
Mhm.
It just does a lot of damaging things from beginning to end. From beginning to end.
It's really expensive being poor.
Yes, it is. Yes, it absolutely
It is
is.
so expensive being poor. And that's one thing I want to like drive home to our audience is like like I think maybe not enough people may understand, that life. Um, but I hope Leanne touched someone enough to where they're curious and want to like show more compassion to our neighbors because I believe that we can't will be unable to drive, be in the driver's seat for our own conversations when it comes to our career, our financial opportunities in this country, if we're not looking out for those that are less, who have, who aren't as advantaged, like have the same advantages as we do. So,
I agree. I hope it spawns more compassion, and I also hope it inspires some more expectation of accountability. Uh,
yes.
Period. Because
Hmm.
this is a known horror story. Well, I have my final story, which is um might end on a slight up note because it has a heroine
Oh, yeah.
who saves a day. Okay.
Wonderful.
I don't
Did
know
she
about
help
I don't know
Leanne?
about the day, but she saves a day.
Ooh, I am ready.
So this story, and we'll see if I think its inspiration will be relatively clear. But it's called The Phoenix Pocket.
Okay.
And it takes place locally in the tech-driven heart of Austin, Texas. Everyone knew you either had the latest phone model or you were a ghost of last year.
You disappear. You were such a good ghost.
I do my best. Delilah Starr, a sharp-eyed engineer at the tech firm Neosurge, was a rising star in their product safety division. After a series of reports began circulating that Neosurge's newest release, the Cinderfire 4X, was overheating and, rumor had it, exploding in people's pockets, Delilah was called in for an emergency analysis. The chaos began on social media. Videos of charred clothes and melted cars filled the internet, posted by horrified users of the Cinderfire 4X. These pocket rockets, as people started calling them, had turned dangerous in the blink of an eye. The city was on edge, but Neosurge's CEO, Dan Boyd, downplayed the panic with a confident smirk. Our products are safe, he told the press. This is just a handful of faulty units. Delilah didn't believe him. She'd been working tirelessly to figure out why certain Cinderfire 4X units were failing. Each failed unit showed different types of battery deformities, which only deepened the mystery. Some batteries swelled, while others had traces of impurities in the separators that could ignite under pressure. The thought of everyday people carrying around ticking time bombs was terrifying, and Delilah's unease grew as the reports intensified. And then one night, her phone dinged with an alert. An urgent message from her friend Camille. Del, my Cinderfire's burning a hole in my jeans. Delilah raced to Camille's house, but by the time she arrived, the phone was nothing more than a melted slab, and Camille was nursing a mild burn on her leg. You're the best engineer I know, Camille said, trying to smile through her frustration and pain. If anyone can fix this mess, it's you. Later that night, as Delilah sat in her dimly lit apartment with scorch-marked jeans in front of her, she had an idea. What if there was a way to contain the heat before it caused any damage? Inspired, she began sketching designs for small fire-resistant pouches. Her idea was to create a pocket lining that could withstand extreme heat and even minor explosions. She worked all night, testing materials and experimenting with ideas, until by dawn, she had a prototype she called the Phoenix Pocket. Delilah first pitched the Phoenix Pocket to her team at Neosurge. The marketing department was hesitant, suggesting that marketing fireproof pockets was a terrible look for a phone company trying to downplay a fire hazard. So she went to her friend Maya, a designer with a bold fashion line for women. We could release the Phoenix Pocket in women's jeans first, Delilah suggested. Maya agreed and took it further, launching the Phoenix Pocket collection with a limited release. The news spread fast. Phoenix Pockets became a sensation, with Austin's women leading the trend, showcasing these cutting-edge, fireproof jeans. Soon, women felt safer walking the city streets, carrying their potentially dangerous Cinderfire 4X phones without the fear of burning pockets or worse. Social media picked up the trend, and Phoenix Pockets quickly became the icon of fashion and safety. But the twist came when Delilah discovered that Neosurge knew about the battery issues all along. Emails leaked from Dan Boyd's office hinted that they'd concealed the fire hazard to avoid the financial blow a recall would bring. Horrified by the betrayal, Delilah shared her findings with the public, bringing Neosurge to its knees. In the end, the Phoenix Pocket saved more than just fabric. It ignited a movement. Women's clothing brands adopted fireproof linings, and soon after, companies did the same for all genders. making safe pockets a universal feature. Delilah's creation turned a terrifying tech failure into a new wave of innovation, proving that sometimes it's the small pockets of safety that can make the biggest impact.
The small pockets of safety can make the biggest impact. That was brilliant. I love that line. Oh my gosh. Oh, masterpiece. Okay. The cell phone blowing up, like exploding. I remember that. I think I was like in high school or going into college at that time. What a scary time. Like your phone could just explode.
It was, I mean, I remember seeing like a video of somebody like in a convenience store, and there literally was like a jet rocket of fire shooting out of their pant leg. And I'm like,
Insane. And there we have some similar like themes or topics that we're discussing. I in my earlier story, I think well, I was talking about like the lithium battery and being
yeah,
cursed by the miners. Perhaps, the miners were like, hey, here's some battery explosion for you. But that was just like insane that the company like I wonder like what was the testing like? Do you have more about like the story? Like, did they not test the new battery or what happened?
there were, I do. I'm like, now you're asking me for details. Don't ask me for details on this spot. I'm like, I read all the articles. They'll be linked. They'll be linked in the thing.
Yeah, let's look at articles.
What it really comes down to in this, and I think that this is something that we see in a lot of situations, whether products are being rushed to market, whether it is an issue of reduction in costs, or however we want to look at it, it functionally impacts engineering excellence.
Mm,
But in both of my stories, engineering excellence and kind of the ideal around engineering a product to truly serve your consumer and not to actually harm your consumer was sort of what drove me. It's like we're so, you know, pushed to sort of always get the next best thing, the next, whatever cool thing is coming out, whether it's, the new hot vehicle or the, new phone, regardless of what brand it is. And, to your point about your original story, we just sort of accept everything that comes with it,
mhm.
everything, including its legacy to your story, and all of that is, I mean, we're all participating in that. And when we're accepting all of that stuff that's sort of like hidden shadow stuff, because, certainly a lot of the things you talked about are definitely like unseen in the way that we get marketed to, and the way that content and information and products are presented to us, all of that stuff resides in the shadows of those products.
Right.
But also in the shadows of those products are our extreme desire to like always need that next thing, and to not literally even care if it's been tested or produced in a way that it's going to, benefit us, or not harm us. I mean, like the idea that, we could invest in products that are actively harming us it is really horrifying. And it happens in so many different ways. I told tech stories. I didn't tell any food stories, y'all. I didn't actually want to scare you to death. But that's
Yeah.
really the truth. It's like these big corporations, they do have some accountability to the nightmares they cause in our everyday lives. And whether it's as an employee or a consumer.
When we talk about, I feel like a lot in the circles I'm in, when I hear sustainability, is usually encapsulates fashion
Mhm.
and essentially holding the consumer responsible for how they engage with fashion. So, like examples like fast fashion, like Temu, Shein, No
Right.
longer are you like broadcasting a haul and like getting celebrated for like all the cool things that you found, like the treasures, but now you would do that privately. But it makes me think about sustainability in this like a broader sense. You mentioned this that companies are driven or pushed to release new products almost every year. And depending upon the type of
Season.
company, biannually in a
Yeah.
season. So it's like, why? Like how like there's only so much stuff that an individual could afford. And like a new car, what are we gonna do when everyone has had a new car for 10 years?
Hmm.
Like how why is it so important to continue to increase like our consumer base? There's still like a set number of people on the planet, and then that subset of like people who are interested in your product, and then another subset of like who could afford your product. So then once you tap them, then what? And now you're starting to create new products that you're not even that doesn't align with your values, your mission, your vision to reach more people. So it makes me think about sustainability and more like from a corporate like responsibility as well as a consumer.
Absolutely. I mean, that's the thing. It's like you're shamed as a consumer, but you're also shamed as not a consumer.
Mhm.
We have had leaders of our country tell us to be patriotic and go shopping. And that is a real quote. And I won't quote the leader and I won't quote, but those are things that have those are messages that are sent to us. And so to hold space for that, like, oh, in order to be patriotic, in order to be a good citizen, in order to be a good American, in order to be a good whatever, you have to be putting your money into the economy, right? You have to be participating in the economy. But on the flip side, there is sort of the shaming and the dismissal of the consumer. So whether it's being shamed for the choices that you're making, or the consumer is absolutely not being considered based on the mortality ratio of a recall and how much that costs and what a company is willing to spend based on, like just products that don't functionally work or act as advertised, and the consumer is just spending their money and wasting it, and there's no accountability based on, and I'll just bring them up because it's Horror Story Day. My favorite horror story company, Boeing, okay, for scaring the shit out of us for flying. Okay, like it's like all
Oh
of
my
these things,
gosh.
are all relevant in terms of how consumers engage in the capitalistic process. And so we're both good and evil, and we're both helpless and empowered. That somehow neutralizes all of our power and energy. And really, most of that power resides up here,
Mm.
and it's all being driven.
Oh my gosh. Like I remember getting relaxers as a kid, and now there's like I think I was like maybe like end of elementary school until like I was in college. And there's like a class action lawsuit against like the relaxer companies. And so like imagine if as a consumer, like my family knew like all of the like actually understood because they like will tell you about the side effects or don't use the product like on directly on your scalp, etc., because it could cause these things, but not ever really explaining what it could do to you hormonally.
Mhm.
Like maybe was there research on what that could do? There's now there's like women of colors and specifically Black women who have used relaxers are disproportionately more likely to have like uterine fibroids, to have breast cancer or some other form of cancer. And they're like, it could be linked to these relaxers. So being responsible as a creator in our environment, as an innovator to do that research. And then it makes me question, like should that be part of government's job to ensure that business leaders have access to capital for further research and development before releasing products to the American consumer? Is that a business line item for the individual like creator, the inventor? Will that then create more of a bias of who gets to create versus who can afford to? It is something that we should continue to discuss because It's important.
It is. It's an important topic. Wow. Well, this has been, I think, kind of a cool episode for us. I've enjoyed listening. Well, I've enjoyed your stories. Your story scared the shit out of me and appropriately impacted me. I am definitely going to be even more thoughtful about something that I was already quite thoughtful about, and I hope that the audience resonates with that as well.
I hope so too. And I'm curious about like if the audience, if you all could like share your stories about like maybe if you had like a phone glitch, what did you think? Will you now forever be scarred by the story I shared? Like your smart car, has it ever taken over while and you felt like you were no longer in control? Do you feel like you're trapped in an economic cycle that you're trying to release yourself from, but it just seems like it's just happening again and again? Or are you a consumer that has been, wronged or,
Are,
bought a
are you a
product that
consumer who's being consumed?
consumer being consumed? Oh my gosh, they're so good. Stephanie, you and these like these like one-liners just get me every time. Yeah, just like let us know in the comments. We can't wait to hear your creepy stories.
Absolutely. And so, quickly before we wrap, just a shout out for November. We've got some interesting shows. We've got two separate shows coming up with some great guests. Shaniqua, do you want to just say a couple of things about what we've got?
Yes. So we're looking at in November, we're looking at employment in two different fashions. One, our first episode is going to talk more about trade work. We've noticed in the media with data that shows that more Gen Z and adults are transitioning out of corporate into more trades work. So we want to explore that with a guest that Stephanie helped us secure. We can't wait to introduce you all to them. And
Yeah.
then the second episode is going to be more about like the latest trend of employment, the fractional work. Like everyone's talked about being a fractional consultant of some function in corporate. So we're looking at bringing on two guests that's building out their fractional business. So we'll have two sides of the same coin, the trade work and fractional work. And we're really looking forward to explore those types of employment to give us all more options when we're exploring.
It's going to be fabulous, y'all. And I promise it won't be as scary as October was.
Or should I go? Oh my gosh, yes. Okay, yeah, yeah, whatever you like.
All right, everybody. Thanks so much for listening, and we will see you soon.
Ooh, happy Halloween. Stephanie, where'd you go? Bye, y'all. Thanks for listening to our show. Show us your support by following us on your favorite podcast platform, Apple, Spotify, or wherever you listen.
You can also find us on Castus at fromilluminationtoinnovation.castus.com. If you love our show, share it with your friends and coworkers too. Let's all work together to help businesses vibrate higher.